What's up?
How's it going, Sean?
Good. How are you?
Excellent. Welcome. Today is Saturday, the second of the year, and we have number 34, episode number 34 with Sean Kingsbury today of the Swahn podcast. So thanks for joining me and humoring me and coming on here and just chatting, talking about some motorsports in your life.
Well, I guess we're jumping right in, so that's good. Are we recording video, Eric?
Yeah, recording video and audio, and then I'll just splice it all together later.
So Mark Rhoades is going to join in just a second here.
Okay, very good. Is he with you or at another location?
I'm in LA and he's in Chicago.
Okay, very good.
Mm-hmm. So while we wait for him to join, we'll get started. I'll just text him.
Sure. And so you're an insurance agent, and that's been going pretty well for you, I think.
I used to be an insurance agent. Yeah, I just almost 3 years ago now, I gave up my State Farm agency in Chicago, and State Farm recruited me to join the leadership team. So I joined the corporation, and they asked me to move to LA as part of that, which was easy. I'm from Chicago, but my wife is from here, and we live like 25 miles away from where she grew up and went to high school.
Oh, very cool. It all comes back full circle then.
Yeah.
Very good. You know, I'm in a situation similar to that. I used to live about a mile or two from where I'm working now, and I've moved away from there, and now I got a further commute. I almost wish I lived in the same spot again. It'd be nice to have that, just walk down the street, go to work kind of thing.
I loved that about living in Chicago. We didn't really we had a car because, we have kids, but we didn't use it. I was able to walk or ride my bicycle everywhere, take the train. And now, especially because I live in sort of like ultra suburban LA, where there's nothing walkable. People in LA don't walk anyway.
Yeah.
And people out here surely don't walk. Like sometimes, a friend will come over that lives like 7 houses down and they'll drive.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, just living so much closer to work, I think it improves your life. I think it, you don't have to spend that time commuting. You don't have to, so much wear and tear on your vehicles. You just get some of your life back that you wouldn't otherwise be able to enjoy.
Well, that's true. Sorry, I'm texting Mark.
Yeah, I think he's trying to log on right now.
There he is.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Go to gallery.
Are you guys there? I don't know if I'll have video today.
Okay.
Is it okay if I go without? Or I can call Sean. I can call in another time. I wasn't prepared for video. I apologize.
That's no problem. We can live with your voice.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so we just want to talk about some motorsports today, and today we also have Mark Rhoades. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Mark Rhoades, you've been road racing for quite a while now, and tell us a little bit of background on that.
I started road racing in 2015. Well, the end of 14, I guess. Just traditional. Went track day riding, and then a buddy got his license, and then 2014 went down to Daytona with a Honda CBR and lost, crashed in front of my family. And then the winter of 14-15, I decided that I really liked it and I wanted to be better at it. So I got some proper equipment from Faro Performance and worked on my craft. And then in 2015, had a pretty big year where I traveled a lot, won a lot of amateur races. And then in 2016, I skipped white plate and went pro. We ran the 200, Daytona 200. And then I ran Moto America. and then did that again for another year in 2017. Ran the 200 again in 17.
So you seem to like to hit that Daytona as a feature round of your season?
I'm not racing right now. Actually, I'm racing on 4 wheels, not on 2.
So how do you go about making that transition from 2 to 4?
Well, a lot of things I'm sure most could relate. 2017, I had a lot of violent crashes. I broke my back
Ooh.
3 months before the 200. That gave us about 3 weeks of body training for the 200, and we finished, which was great. But then I did race a sprint race the next morning, and I got ran over, which was not terrible. Sounds worse than it was. And then later in the season, I had a pretty bad off at Pueblo, and those 3 crashes were violent, and I just kind of wanted to take a rest. So I'm currently resting the bike and me. So I'll probably get back on the bike here soon, but just decided to take a break from it.
Yeah, it can be a very hazardous sport. It's something that everybody accepts as soon as they throw their leg over the bike, but
Yeah.
you can't always eliminate all types of crashes or injuries or getting run over. That's something you really don't have much control over. Now,
Yeah.
safety in cars is much better, but I was just talking to my brother about open wheel cars and how they have that halo device.
Mm-hmm.
There's still a lot of lower classes that don't have that. Are you in full cage still?
Yeah. So I'm in an open wheel dirt car
Okay.
with a full roll cage. It's I have crashed many times without, not even a scratch. It is it does have risks. People have died at the track at this level as well, but it's pretty rare. The car does have fenders, and a cage, so when we beat up on each other, it's not so bad. The consequences are lower, but I do miss road racing. It's a much more physical sport, which I really liked, and it really, part of the reason I road race was keep healthy. Sounds funny, but I stopped racing because of health reasons, but I road raced because of health reasons. It kept me in shape.
Yeah. And jumping back to you, Sean, you're big into bikes, is that right? Cycling, downhill, mountain biking, and all that?
Yeah. So before we go to that, Eric, I got to circle back on a couple of things that Mark really quickly glazed over. I mean, I wrote a couple of notes here. Mark loves me for calling him out on stuff. As far as I know, I remember reading that he was the winningest amateur that there's ever been in motorcycle road racing.
Wow, that's a high status there.
Yeah. So that's one thing that he's like, yeah, I won a couple of things. No, I think he won like everything in his amateur year, which is why he skipped expert and went pro. I was with him when he was run over, and I was with him when he broke his back as well. I'll tell you a little story on each of those. We left the track after he'd broken his back in Chuckwalla, but we didn't know he'd broken his back. He was in a lot of pain, and I was obviously like, you're just being lazy because you don't want to load the bikes and stuff, but okay, whatever, go sit down. And myself, John Blake, got everything packed up, and Mark kind of patiently sat around and waited. And I don't know if he even took an ibuprofen or anything. Maybe like 2-something hours, 3 hours, maybe more, longer, a bit later, we were sitting down to eat a taco, and Mark was just like 2 bites into the taco, like, guys, something's majorly wrong. I got to get out of here. And we got to go to the emergency room. And John is just an amazing guy to have with you in situations like this. He's a retired fireman and paramedic from Akron, Ohio. Just spoke with him yesterday to catch up. He turned 64 this year, and he's still racing flat track, racing motocross, and racing road bikes. And so anyway, we took him to the emergency room. Thanks. In I don't know, somewhere near Palm Springs, but it wasn't Palm Springs. And it was one of those things like you see in an 80s movie, like there's like a guy in there that's like holding his chicken, and like people are just coughing everywhere. It's like a 7-hour wait.
Yeah.
just a very, overworked emergency room. And one of the staff members came to us and said, "Hey, it seems like your friend is really seriously hurt. You should leave and go to Palm Springs," which is just a much higher end thing. It's like a 45-minute drive or whatever. Okay. So we drive over there, we go in, and then Mark's emergency room doc, who's coming in to like break the news, like, "Hey, you've broken your back in, I believe, 2 places," and is going over the x-rays and stuff. I'm looking at this guy like, this is a very handsome guy who's very charismatic, this doctor is. And I said, "Hey, for our road racing TV project, is it okay if I record you giving Mark the news about the broken back?" He's like, "Yes, I'd be very comfortable with that. You might know me from previously starring on the TV show." I can't remember which show it was anymore, but some emergency room TV show
Yeah.
that the doctor had previously starred on. He was an actual doctor who applied for the show and was on the show for like 2 seasons.
Oh,
A show
wow.
that we would know if I could remember it. So that's that one. And the doctor was just like, "Dude, you're so lucky, and I can't believe you waited this long to come in here."
Was there any risk of paralysis with that injury?
As far as I
No,
remember, there wasn't, right?
no, it broke my spinous process.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's like basically a tab on the outside of the spinal tower. So you have these like tabs on the edge, and I was wearing a D-air suit and a Dainese back protector, so I high sided and went over the bike. I was I was on a 600 racing 1000cc bikes, which I love to do because it's the underdog thing. It's a lot of fun to be able to beat 1000cc bikes. So I think I was passing for third. I was on a 600, the guy was on 1000, and I was trying to just, do my best to get around him. I went around him on the outside, and the Chuck wall is known to be dusty and sandy. And if you're off the line, it just gets slippery. And so I high sided and tossed myself over the bike and landed on my back. At the time, it felt fine, and maybe the adrenaline was pumping. And, we've all, I've crashed multiple dozen times, probably 20, 30 times. And, you get sore. And then after the race, I remember that taco stand chair was wood and
Yeah.
it was like really uncomfortable. And I think my muscles just started to tense up. But at the end of the day, it wasn't that serious. That's why I was able to recover within a month or two and then train for the 200, which, if you know anything about the 200, you really need to train the whole year. And it really messed up, my schedule. So I had to kind of try to get my endurance back as best as I could within a 2 or 3 week window. But we got it. I mean, we made it, we finished the race. I mean, the fact that we finished 2 Daytona 200s in a row is, a feat in itself. Something like 60 or 70 bikes enter and maybe 30 finish.
Yeah, it's a high attrition rate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an endurance race, and you can't do it by yourself. You got to have a good team, and luckily my guys, were amazing. I came in the pits. There was a couple times where I gained positions in the pit stop, so that helped me a lot.
That's always a nice help when your team can give you a boost or a couple second advantage. Some of these Formula One teams are doing sub 2 second pit stops for 4 tires. It's wild.
Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were shooting for sub 30s.
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
but on a motorcycle, it's a different animal. You got to take the axle out. These tires don't come off easy.
Yeah.
So.
And let's circle back to something you were saying earlier about how do you skip your expert season? I've never heard of that before. How do you even get licensing to approve
Yeah,
that?
that's a good question. Basically, midway through my amateur season, I had a decision to make, and that was break all the records as an amateur yellow plate or move up to white plate. And again, I think I really like the underdog feel. I really liked starting in the second wave and coming after the white plates and, running through the white plates. Oftentimes I would finish right near the podium as a yellow plate, or I even podiumed on the white plate race, starting from the second wave a few times. But it was definitely, if I had to say this, when I started road racing, I wasn't planning on going pro. That was the major thing. Had I planned on going pro, I probably would have gone white plate first. But basically because I'd won, I think it was, I don't know, I can't remember, 9 national titles, 30 something regional titles, and 4 number 1 plates.
In 1 year.
In 1 year, I won 114 races or something, which I don't think.
Wow.
I think that's the record. I mean, I don't know anyone else who did.
Most people don't enter 114 some races a year.
Yeah, right. I mean, I was going at it. I had my RV, my little rig in the back, and we were just traveling. And my goal at the beginning of that season was number 1 plate Florida and Illinois, because I had a business in Florida and a business in Illinois. I really like traveling. I really like being in both areas. And I started winning. And then I just, I was like, oh, I'm number 1 right now in, Mid-Atlantic. I should, maybe I should try to go for that one. So as the year went on, I kind of got more and more ambitious, and I didn't want to throw away all that, achievements that I was kind of going for. So, at Daytona Race of Championships, we won 8 national titles, including the ASRA, which is the one that essentially got me permission to enter the 200. During the off season of that season, we went to Chuckwalla and raced white plate in Southern California. So I did technically have a very brief white plate season. You kind of have to run pro. So we ran a bunch of Chuckwalla races. And then by the time Daytona hit, I had gotten enough points to go ahead and, enter as a pro in Moto America.
So I think you're required to have X amount of points within so many years. I think something like
that. Yeah. I mean, I was as soon as the Race of Champions was over, I switched. I finished Homestead yellow plate. That's right. And then we went to Chuckwalla, and I switched to white plate, and then just raced every single white plate race I could before Moto America season started. But they kind of told me that it would be okay. I'd make it. So
yeah.
But that was a huge, going from, I'd have to say, my amateur year, the bike was right, and it was dialed in. We had it right to the rules, and we had Pirelli tires. I'll tell you what I had. My setup for my amateur year, I didn't touch it almost ever. I won all those races on Pirelli tires, Race Tech internal front forks, which is just the factory fork with different internals, and then a Penske rear shock. That's probably the weakest link in that setup, but with that setup, I won all those races, and I barely touched anything.
Wow.
But if you know anything about Pirelli, they're very soft, and that Race Tech's front fork was very soft as well. As long as I wasn't bodying them out, it was just kind of like a Cadillac type feel of a front tire. And then it was quite a rude awakening to switch from that to a Dunlop front tire, and then a K-Tech cartridge front, which gave 1,000% more feedback, which was quite a learning curve for me. I was used to not feeling much at all, and then it was just all this load of information at once, which definitely made it difficult for me to get comfortable on the on the pro equipment, which then threw a bunch of a lot of challenges at me, because it was going from my amateur setup where I didn't have to think about the bike. It was all good. I just had to worry about me, to when we went pro, I was running the team. Then the bike wasn't right. So then I had to worry about that. And then I didn't have, we weren't factory team. I was kind of, fall around a budget, trying to make it work on my own, just independent. So as the 2016 and 17 seasons went on, the Dunlop tire got actually a lot better, and a lot softer. The Dunlops in 15, you had to push, or else it wouldn't grip.
Not enough
You know,
heat generated.
yeah, they would get cold really fast, and if you weren't pushing hard enough, which, you know, for someone that's like, you know, not comfortable on a tire, it's very counterintuitive, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, if you're not feeling like it's working right, you got to push harder to make it work right.
yeah, and it just went from like riding a Cadillac to what felt like very rigid, where I could feel everything on the track, which at the end of the day, you do want that. I just wasn't used to that setup. And to go back to like skipping my white plate year, if I were to do it again, I probably would have gotten a more Moto America spec bike with the spec tire and spent more time with that setup before I entered, uh, you know, the pro ranks. Obviously, my amateur year, I entered and like we did really well, and I thought, well, let's keep the momentum. I mean, my socials were going nuts. I had a lot of momentum, so I just said, you know what, let's just go right to the 200 and let's go right to Moto America Racing, and that's what we did. So
And you mentioned in there Jason Farrell that you were getting some bikes built by him. I assume you're on some Cowies.
yeah, I mean, at the beginning of 2015, that was the bike to have. Jason built me an amazing bike, and we ran data acquisition. So my first, you know, the whole season of 2015, all those wins, I would be practicing, and then if he wasn't with me at the track, I would email him files, and then he would read them and say, you know what, you're not hard enough on the brakes in these turns, and you
That's
know,
so valuable to have the information and insight from a professional who's telling you
yeah.
on actual data.
Well, that's the thing is you can have aim, but like to have someone read it is just invaluable. I mean, you can show me an aim file and I get lost, but to have Jason be able to pull it up, and was really helpful was when I was at tracks that he had been on and he had files. So he would open up his file and like lay my file over his, and it was real easy to see, okay, you know, just so you know, I'm braking 20 feet past where you're braking in turn 7, you know, and that
Yeah.
was really valuable stuff. So then I could be like, okay, well, if he can do it, I can do it too. And so then we would just push those, you know, work on those corners that he would, you know, coach me on virtually.
Yeah, I just saw another racer, Nolan Lampkin. He released his data on Instagram. He picked a track, I think it might have been Barber or something, and he said, "Here's my data from my last time out in the race event at this track for you know my fastest lap." And
Nice.
you can do whatever want with it what you want. You can overlay your data. You can compare it. You can see where you're faster or slower. And I just think that's so great. Kind of open sourcing your own data. Is that something you would ever do? Is release your data for free?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's one of those things where you know, I enter now dirt racing and I'm thinking about doing the same thing, but being a little more open source. The problem with that is, you know, the fast guys are not going to release their data. So, of course, when I was an amateur, I was thinking, well, my times aren't that fast, so who would want that? But you know, in retrospect, you know, we were only a couple seconds away from the white plate fast time, so definitely good valuable data for any track day rider or half the, you know, amateur field. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I still have my computer, my race computer with all the files with all the tracks and stuff. It's just yeah, I definitely wouldn't be against releasing it. You know, it's all good stuff, especially if you have the same equipment
Right.
and you can compare apples to apples. Like, okay, he's got 80% brake pressure, you know, or 80 psi. I think, you know, I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, that stuff's really valuable.
And back then you were still running like suspension potentiometers and
Yes.
pressure sensors.
Yep. Yeah, pressure sensors on the brakes, on the front brakes, and then we had front and rear suspension, and then we obviously clicked into the ECU with all the other, you know, uh, computer generated stuff that we need, engine temp and stuff. And you know, another good thing about the AIM data is that for mechanical issues, you can pinpoint, because when you're on the bike, you're not watching the temp rise. You can go
Right.
back and watch, oh, I was overheating. We should check that out, So.
Yeah, very cool. So you guys have any ties with the Moto America paddock at the moment?
We both have kind of, Sean, you want to field that question?
Yeah, glad to. So I think this really takes me back to a much bigger story than this. So while all of this is happening, Mark talked about his 16 and 17 transition, and that is when Mark and I met. Sometime in 2016, he and I connected. I reached out to him. I didn't know him actually. I just knew that he had done really well as an amateur, and I was getting ready to try to do a full pull in an amateur season in 17. And so, because I had just sort of dabbled on and off for like 15 something years, sort of like most people do, ride some track days when you can, sort of miss a season, you enter a race, you don't, whatever. And as we all know, the area around Chicago, that part of the Midwest, is just a vibrant place for road racing. It's amazing, the community and the tracks and access to a variety of places to go and a bunch of cool people. And so I reached out to Mark, and I was kind of excited to like get together, and he kind of just agreed to have a cup of coffee with me so I could learn a bit about how he had done so well in his amateur season. And funny story, I missed the meeting on accident because I'm really dumb in that way, and I misread my calendar or something. But then he was kind enough to redo. He was kind enough to meet with me again a couple of days after the time that I had missed. And so he and I got together, and we immediately just clicked on the way that we thought about racing analytically, always looking for like dive into the rule book, look at the way that the thing works, look at what everyone else is doing, read the data on everyone else's times, get data off the bikes. Sort of like you can be naturally amazing at this sport and just kind of get lucky and go out and do well, or you can go in and be better prepared than everybody and do well. And so when he and I met, with me and him both at that time in particular being two of the few people in the world that have ample amounts of free time on their hands, he invited me to go to Chuckwalla with him like 5 days later or whatever. For anybody else, it would be like, that would be great if I could get away. And I was like,
Right.
yeah, all right, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Perfect.
So we went to Chuckwalla, and Mark started not just talking about how to win races, but he talked about the sport a lot. And what I began to observe that Mark was already very well aware of was that there's an immense amount of drama in the sport, like immense. And you combine that fact, the compelling information about the sport, such as at Daytona, only 6 of the riders are going to get the new Dunlop Spec tires, or then in Moto America, some people are getting 2-year-old tires, and they're not going to have a chance to win on them. But then such and such team has all this money, and then so and so isn't. And then there's a rumor that somebody did something with some part of their bike they weren't supposed to, and then somebody's racing bad because they just got dumped. And then that crew chief is like yelling at that guy, and like there's just a lot of that human stuff in the sport. And so Mark proposed that we capture like a 1 season behind the scenes look at Moto America and road racing in general. And you compound all of that sort of just sexiness with the fact that the sport, especially in that time period, was wildly declining. Viewership after the transition to be in sports of Moto America, viewership was just like, we all grew up watching Two Wheel Tuesday, and like even if you didn't know about motorcycles, you kind of knew the name Josh Hayes or whatever. And we saw that people didn't know. My kids had never seen motorcycle racing like that, and you maybe see one MotoGP race on TV in a year or something on accident. And so we had this idea to create a platform where we could capture the human elements of the story and have racing be a feature of it because, you know, Moto America was already capturing the racing. And so what about everything else? Well, that's where things got really interesting because all of a sudden, you know, within like months, we were getting 200,000+ views a month on our content. We could just get access to anything, anywhere, anytime. We were becoming wildly popular in the sport. And then at the same time that that was happening, all of a sudden, frankly, Moto America, this is me talking, this might not represent Mark's opinions on the matter, but I don't care. So Moto America all of a sudden is very threatened by it. And they're like, well, let's, you know, do what they're doing and do it better and monetize it. Because everything we ever did, we did for free. We gave it away. It's like, well, Mark's at the race. I'm not racing in Moto America. I'm still doing my amateur season that year. Let me capture everything since I'm there with Mark hanging out. And then I got this huge benefit of having, you know, Mark and having Farrell and having like access to, I mean, I could sit down with Josh Hayes and be like, Josh, I'm going to be racing this track in my amateur thing next week. What should I be thinking about? Or talking to Nolan all the time, you know, you name it. We probably got to spend an immense amount of time with that person, the person they were dating, maybe their parents. We just had access. And so it gave me the opportunity to have the best bike setup, the best coaching, the best, literally best of everything, like pro level mechanic helping me after I crash at Blackhawk or whatever, like total overkill. But then it also created an opportunity where I was with Mark at every one of the rounds, capturing this behind the scene footage and just giving it away. And so, yeah, we would definitely capture some of the moments on track a little, but it's like, okay, just tune in to beIN Sports and watch Moto America for that. Yeah. But we would capture the other stuff. And it turns out that it's such a like gentleman's type of sport. And if you were to go back on our page and look at the time I sat down with Josh Hayes for lunch, and that video is still up on our page, he would say he thinks it's his fault that the sport became so tame and a little bit lame. It's kind of like if you're mad after a race because somebody cut you off and you like shove them or throw your helmet or whatever, then you're punished by the sport. And those are the moments that get people to watch. As Mark would always say to me, we need heroes and we need villains. And so we captured a lot of that. And like I said, it was this, you know, two waves meeting in the middle, where on the one side, we immediately had access to literally everything. We could call any dealership and be like, hey, we want to do this, or we could call somebody up and like, we want to ride this track, or whatever we could ask for. The world was our oyster. And yet at the same time, we were starting to find this headwind from Moto America, where they were like, why are these two knuckleheads with like an iPhone and a live stream connection getting more views sometimes in a race than they would get? You know, we were creating this like, yeah, well, they wanted to monetize it, you know, and listen, we got to spend quite a bit of time with the owners of the group, and there were some, I won't name names at this point, but there were some that were all about supporting us because they saw it as a free marketing arm that would feed viewers beyond their paywall to pay for the season. And then others were like, these guys are just trashing up the sport. Nobody cares about the fact that so-and-so just got dumped, or somebody is now dating somebody's ex-girlfriend, or, you know, whatever. Nobody cares about that. And we were like, yeah, they do.
Yeah, people really do care about it because, you know, I'm not so much like a football fan, but you see there's pre-game football shows, there's post-game football shows, there's football shows about the football shows, you know, on and on and on. They go into it very in depth. And I don't think there's enough motorsport content out there. And that's one reason why I'm trying to do this, to help. You know, a lot of my friends don't even follow motorsports, and you know, I became a professional myself, professionally licensed at least, and they don't know like what an apex is. So I'm trying to help get the word out as well, and also I think it's important to introduce people and show the characters that are already out, and just try to promote the people and the interesting people. There's so many interesting people that's why I like talking to you guys.
Well, yeah, we, you know, man, Sean, you should tell them about our our ideas. There's a lot of ideas we didn't get to execute that talk a lot about that.
Yeah.
So, you know, Eric, to your point, pretty much anybody who participates in this sport is some kind of psychotic.
Yes.
Think about it. Look at all that hardware you got behind you. You put your life on the line. You spent your own hard-earned money to gamble with your life in order to earn a piece of wood.
But it's
That's the story for all of us. I'll tell you, I just recently, this might upset some people because I said this once previously. Anyway, I said this once off color and I didn't mean anything by it. I guess before I say this, I'll say everything Mark and I have ever done has been exactly to achieve that same goal. You know, we told Moto America, like, we'll work for you. You know, we'll be independent contractors. We can advise you on media. We could work directly with you guys. We'd be more than happy to do that. They just never quite understood the vision of how to create those compelling stories about the psychosis of everybody in the sport.
yeah.
I recently threw away almost 99% of my medals and plaques, which people would be like, bro, what are you doing? I was like, there's this stack of wood with these things in my garage, like, you know, and I was like, it's just getting dust. I'm just going to get rid of it. So I just threw them all out. Obviously, I kept one or two little trinkets of some championships. But point is, when you take a friend that you have that doesn't understand the sport and you show them that it's like the barrier to entry is really low, you can go get a pretty decent track bike for like $2,000, throw a suit on and a helmet, which you already own everything except maybe the suit because you ride motorcycles anyway, and you can go out there and get in a place with no speed limit on these killer machines that can chop each other's legs off or whatever, and whatever, everything that goes into this sport. It's absolutely addictive to anybody. But to Mark's point, we had this vision of like, we really started with a central question, which is, why is it not more interesting to watch this sport? And we found that one of the major challenges is it's difficult to cover. Even if you watch like the incredibly high quality production of a MotoGP race, I mean, that's just super good entertainment. I don't care who you are. You can be sitting at a bar somewhere and the MotoGP race is on. You've never watched a race or seen a motorcycle in your life, and you're going to find that to be pretty interesting.
It's got a wow factor.
It does. And what they're able to do is they're able to show in real time and capture the sound and the G-force and stuff with video and audio in a really clever way. But even then, half of the races that I watch, it's like, okay, so basically so-and-so is way ahead and the next person is way ahead, but far behind number one. And so we're going to just watch the battle for third or seventh. We're going to go back and forth between the battle for third and the battle for seventh. And we're going to talk about why those are important. But it's kind of like, is it though? I mean, you're just going to, you know, look over and watch Sykes all alone doing laps. That's his whole season for many years, or like what, you know, if you're talking Superbike, or it's just, and so then what happens? People have good intentions. Companies have good intentions. Everybody has good intentions, and they do stuff to try to keep it competitive. And then it's like, okay, well, because again, like in World Superbike, I see you've got the SBK hoodie on. Because then it's like, well, Cowie is just destroying everybody year after year for years. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the rules up to make it more interesting, so it's harder for Kawasaki to continue to win. Let's try throwing a Ducati in there with like 7,100 cc's, or it doesn't matter. They can do anything they want, but you got to stay at 1,000 if you're on a Ninja and so on. Like all these things kind of come together. And this is where I think that we had this vision of like, let's throw GoPros hooked up to cellular connections to live stream, which was kind of a new thing at that time period. Or like, let's duct tape iPhones live streaming onto the front of bikes. Like we tried everything. We did it all.
Yeah.
The vibration and the heat and stuff would just kill that type of equipment at the time. And then tracks are in remote areas, so there's not great cell coverage. And what do you do? Like set up your own cellular network somehow? It's really difficult. And so we had a lot of vision to do that type of stuff. But then it gets to the point where it's like, just like anything with social media, I have found your path is created on accident. You know, like we put this video out there of like Jody Berry and Jason Farrell in the RV 10 minutes before a race, like blasting some metal and like dancing around and acting like knuckleheads. And all of a sudden it was like our first video to break, say, 10,000 views or something like that.
Go viral.
And we're like, yeah, we're like, okay, people like that. That's interesting. And then, you know, you kind of that wasn't the plan. The plan was we're going to live stream cameras from the bike. You know, the plan was we're going to catch race starts and stuff like that. But then, you know, like there's so much excitement in the minutes before the grid is cleared and then the race starts and like, let's get that or whatever. But then you accidentally do something that people really like and you're like, oh, we'll try that again.
Yeah, try
You know,
to
'cause it's
recreate
like,
those kind of moments is now the new norm is what you're trying to establish. And to your point about, you know, entertainment and why people like racing, or maybe why some races aren't as entertaining. You know, I guess I'm a hardcore fan, and there's a lot of half-ass fans, right? So those fans are going to have different things to care about.
Yeah.
Just like a movie for a kid is a great movie for a kid, also is entertaining for the adults. You know,
Right. Right.
so you have to entertain both parties, and I care who wins, but that's not my ultimate care about the race. Like I don't always think, oh, if this rider doesn't win or if this rider crashes out, I don't care about the race anymore. That's maybe how some people think in like a winner take all mentality, but I just want to see a good race. And sometimes like I look at it as a racer myself. A good race for me would be to be out front by 20 seconds and it's boring. That's a great
yep.
race.
Yes.
Right? But that's not what the fans want to see.
No.
Right.
So it's just
Exactly. And
different.
to your point, that was one of the things that's always been challenging is like I said, as these organizations with great intentions start doing things to make the race more fair in their opinion, then it also could be construed by like a super fan of racing like you as like, this is garbage.
Yeah.
Why are you like neutering whatever? And you get a couple of knuckleheads, especially me, in there, like, you know, looking behind back door places that you're not supposed to necessarily be. And I'm running my camera live streaming with like thousands and thousands of people watching. Then they get nervous. They get nervous. Like, listen, we're fine with the fact that we made these new rules that or whatever, or we're doing this, that, or the other thing. We just don't want anyone to know. And it's like, well, how's that going to work?
It's not being genuine or genuine.
Yeah.
It's a slippery slope. I mean, I feel like any American motorsport in the past, really since the story of Dale Earnhardt and Dale Earnhardt Jr., there hasn't been a good story. And that's why motorsports are hurting right now. So, I mean, on one hand, I feel like, yeah, the racing could be better. The racing should be improved. But at the end of the day, I think characters is what's going to, you know, bring racing back to where it could be at the level of the NFL, maybe. But I mean, there's, you know, without character building, and that's mainly what I was talking about, Sean, is Sean and I had an idea of, you know, possibly, you know, buying coverage of a big race in the US and saying like, why don't we spend time with the riders, give them, you know, 10 minutes online on our platform, edited, you know, of, you know, some good content. Because I feel like, just like the movies, you know, a good movie is a good story, and a good racing means good characters, meaning, you know, a good guy and a bad guy, in my opinion. I feel like there's not been a really good bad guy in road racing in a long time, which then like that's the biggest issue in my opinion with American road racing is there's these like, you know, very clean cut kids, you know, that have factory rides that are very talented. I'm not going to take any of that away from them whatsoever, but what happens is you breed these same type of guys and they're all clean cut, factory ready, spinning shiny and like ready to go. And it's like, yeah, that's great. And it's cool to see one of them racing at the world level. Now it's great. But, you know, that, in my opinion, I mean, I don't know, maybe the MotoGP paddock is a nationalist type of environment where it's a nationalist, arena. Maybe that's what it is. But I felt like the American road racing didn't really have an identity except for these clean cut guys, which is actually pretty counter to motorcycles. Motorcycles are the
100%.
2%ers.
Yeah.
These are the guys that are supposed to be a little bit bad, like, our road racers that we grew up on in the 70s and 80s were smoking cigarettes before, on the grid.
Well, they just don't want to lose their sponsorship. So you see some of these NASCAR guys saying some off-color things and losing entire rides
Right.
and
At the end of the day, yeah, money's ruining a lot of it. I feel like more corporations need to be a little more relaxed with, hey, we're going to throw money at this program, and if the guy's a little rough around the edges, we don't care. Like, I wish some people would, because it would make the program so much better. You know, if I ever got an endorsement, I'd want it to be a company that was rough around the edges, like Jack Daniels or something.
Maybe you can make that happen. You never know. We got
Could
used to be a big sponsor.
So
what's that?
This is the thing, though. Go ahead, Eric.
Saying, Patron used to be a big sponsor. You might be able to get Jack Daniels.
Here's the thing, though.
Here's the thing. Yeah, then we Sean and I had those conversations with, the powers that be, and they're saying, no, you can't have marijuana influenced sponsorships. And we're like, okay, now it's like half legal in half the country, but it's like, again, like, who are we trying to be? This isn't like, this isn't tennis. This isn't golf.
This isn't called golf or tennis. It's not some really corporate. It's motorcycle.
No, but I'm telling you,
and skydive and rock climb and whatever.
It felt very, very clean cut, very corporate, which is like so anti what I think the heart of the sport is, which is
just
a little
freedom,
rebellious,
anti-establishment type.
Yes. 1,000%.
And so that was where the great conflict came in. We postured together to build up this big thing, to the point where, like, it was freaky. I'd be walking around in, like, at COTA, and people would be like, State Farm Agent Sean, what's up? And like, people I never seen or heard of before would come over and be like, can I get a selfie with you? And I'm like, this is really ridiculous. I'm just a nerdy guy. Like, why? I'm not even one of the cool racer guys. But the thing is, I found that was evidence of the fact that the desire was there amongst people. They wanted something that was like that. And so we kind of got to the point where it was like, we built this huge momentum where we had conversations with some TV networks. We had conversations with some really big brands, and we arbitrated a deal. Like Mark said, I don't know if it sounds like from Mark's comment that we're not sharing the details of that, though. I'm never going to do it now. I'd love if somebody did. But to get exclusive rights to televise a race. And sorry, my son needs to be picked up from practice, and I'm reminding my wife. One moment, and then you'll have my full attention again. So point is, we built up this cachet so that we could have the ability to go to big brands and say, like, this is what we have. We have 100,000 people that follow, but we have like 70% of our viewership is coming from non-followers, which we can convert if we professionalize it and blah, 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 all these types of things. We have companies that want to go in on this. We have networks that want to have access to it, or streaming services more in particular, and so on. And then at the end, it's like, we come up with some ideas and we think that these things really have legs, and we could never, we felt like, and were treated like the nemesis of Moto America, which is kind of a head scratcher, right? Like,
not like that you're a supplement, but that you're an antagonist.
Exactly right. And like I said, of the crew of owners of that organization, some of them were fully on our side and did a lot to make it happen for us. But then a different majority in the power differential of that group didn't want us around, to the point where it's like, they would make it hard for me to show up at a race and even be there. And it's like, what? Really?
You're just trying to
And then
help.
other times they're like, hey, what do you want? What do you need? Here's your press pass. Here's, help yourself, do anything. How can we help? And it was very bipolar, to the point where I was with Josh Heron. I want to say this was more than a year ago. I was with Josh Heron and Johnny Rock Page, if you remember Johnny Rock Page.
Oh yeah, he was a presidential candidate.
Yes. So he didn't make it. I don't know if you heard. They
Ah.
recounted several times, and Johnny is not going to be.
Did he
Sorry.
even get on the ballot this year?
No, I don't think so.
No.
Sean?
I think we lost.
And I really
There it
care
goes.
about him a lot. Okay, sorry. He's a dear friend of mine, and I really care about him a lot. And he suffered a serious brain injury that has really had a major negative impact on his life. So we'll move on from that one. But point is, I'm with him, who's like a great personality in the sport. He's so charming and charismatic and so great on camera and, all these things. And obviously Josh, everybody loves Josh. And anyway, even on that day, they were really sweating us. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to like beg you guys to work with us or whatever, like whatever, bye. And so it's like, we did all this work. And also just another shout out while I'm talking about that. We had huge support from Brad, who runs Cycle Law, Dangerous Highways, some of the biggest motorcycle pages in the world, who's a neighbor of mine here in California. I spend a lot of time with him and his wife, Francie, and the baby. And, we built these amazing relationships out of it. We brought all the right people together, and we got the right companies together, and we got the right streaming services together. And even with all of that, it's like, here, we've worked really, really hard for a long time and invested a lot of our own time, energy, and money. And we have a thing that we think we just want you to partner with us, and we can work out the details, because Mark and I weren't ever doing it to make money. That would be ridiculous to ever think that you're going to make money in motorsports. What are you, double psycho?
Right.
So point is, even with all of that stuff, it was just like, nope, that doesn't fit into our model. We want the clean cut. We want to just have a paywall where people just pay to subscribe. And it's like, okay, that hasn't worked for any other company with any other service. Disney Plus is cheaper. Like, I can watch Mandalorian for half the price. Come on.
And they have so much more content and so much more of a legacy, and your price is higher. How can you just?
And that's the thing.
What is this? What is the fee right now, guys?
I'm not sure. $30 a year. Is it more than that?
Jeez. Well, that's
So-
cheaper than Disney.
But you know what I mean? The point I'm making is that other organizations like this, their model is, this comes full circle to the getting big sponsors thing. When you can provide data that enough people are going to have an impression of your content, then you become valuable retail space for marketing. It's like, hey, Moto America, I'm not going to share their numbers because I don't think that they're public, but we did get access to their numbers, and it was just clear why they had to create a paywall, because they didn't have enough viewership to sell enough ad space to pay for the thing, the way that literally every other racing has existed to sell the motorsport and to be an advertising place. And so when you kind of think about it that way, it's like, okay, well, then if it's not your vision to even have enough viewership that you can sustain off of advertising money, then how is this going to work? And then the other thing is, when you go that route, normally a business is controlled by its customers. And the customers of a business actually are the advertisers when it comes to motorsport, not the viewers. The viewers just have to be there in order to create the right number of impressions for the ads. And when none of that happens, then it's like, well, we can just do anything we want to do in whatever way we want to do at a time when motorcycles don't sell. Listen, I live in a 12 season riding community here in LA. I can't tell you the last time I saw a street bike on the road.
Yeah, it's very few. And even you're in the best place to do it. I'm in Michigan, and imagine the sport bikes in Michigan, much fewer and far between, maybe more cruisers, but sure, not a whole lot of sport bikes.
Right.
So for me, at this point, maybe I've just had a little too much coffee or whatever, but I felt like we found an opportunity to create this beautiful arbitrage in which Mark and I could just enact on our vision, grow a huge social media influence so that we could help the sport by creating a viable space where advertisers would want to actually work. But the thing is, Mark and I, even when we had conversations with companies that were interested in spending significant chunks of money, we couldn't in good conscience take that money because of the fact that we did not have a guarantee that we would be able to even continue to have the level of access that we had.
Now, I've talked about this a couple of times briefly on this podcast, but I have an idea. I'm giving it away if anybody wants to do it, but because I would love to see it happen, and I just don't have enough time right now to do it. But to film amateur race series.
Yeah, dude.
Understand that there's going to be even less eyeballs than are gonna watch the pro stuff. However, if there was more amateur coverage, maybe more people would care about the pro stuff. Like it's the whole trickle down thing. Where if you can follow these guys in their amateur career, you want to follow them when they're at the pro career. Just like seeing Garrett Gerloff and Cam Beaubier and Joe Roberts go off to the next stage. You're like, oh, now I want to follow that one also.
Well,
You're on to something.
Yeah, you're onto something, Mark. If you ever want to compare notes, Mark and I have done extensive research on that, and there's so much magic there. Just picture this, Eric. Picture, say, like a 4 or 6 part series. Let's say produced and released by Amazon, just making it up.
Yeah.
Let's say funded by some really cool advertisers, and you basically capture the road to the Daytona 200, where it's like you want to basically take some amateur racers, you work, let's just say, some kind of backroom deal with ASRA and CCS, and you make it so that it's like Eric is one of the racers, you are doing your amateur season, and we watch the whole process for you and say 5 other people or something, and whoever wins in your series of the 6 of you gets to get permission to race in the 200 at the conclusion of their amateur season, and then all that is covered and sold sort of documentary style.
Kind of like a competition between those people also.
And the drama,
Yeah.
and who's going to like have mechanicals, and who's going to crash and get hurt and not make it through the season, or who's going to run out of money, and then like them struggling to like do whatever they do back home in Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, or whatever, to come up with the money, and like grassroots fundraising and all the amazing things that all the amazing athletes competing in that sport live and know and can laugh over a beer around the campfire at the end of the race day about.
Yeah, it'd be awesome.
There's some real beauty in there, but this is the conclusion that we kind of came up with. It's not actually as much about the race. Your racing is like 5 to 10% of your footage time, but it's about that human element of the observing psychotic people. I'm going to work really hard to get a bunch of money together so I can burn it all in a sport that can really hurt me, both financially, physically, and so on.
Yeah,
it's perfect.
But it's the reward of doing it well is so satisfying, right?
You're preaching to the choir here. We all did this. We all love. We are those people.
We are in our own echo chamber.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I feel like a big problem today with the grassroots motorcycle being promoted is that there hasn't been a lot of synergy with the club owners and the Moto America, which I really was hoping when Moto America took over. It was like, okay, great, we can be one nation racing together, where the clubs will support Moto America. For example, the rules, like what shouldn't a Moto America bike and like a club bike be very similar in the rules, so that when Moto America comes to town, club guys can just jump in and race, at the end of the pack and have some more guys on the grid. That's a simple, real, low synergistic idea. But
Yeah,
there's
going
so
from
many
like
ideas where, like, why shouldn't Moto America have film crews at amateur level racing? Absolutely, they should. They should be filming these kids coming up. That would be great. Grassroots is a great way to promote, great way to get the sport. I agree with you 100% that if more people, because that's the thing, like another idea that Sean and I had was like, unfortunately, the technology is not quite there. I mean, when I started racing in 2015, I was trying to tether my phone to my bike and live stream that
Mm-hmm.
first weekend, and I could never get it to work. And still, unfortunately, now I don't even think you can do it. Still, Sean, can you do it with a GoPro yet?
Of course, in theory,
Live?
but you put that sucker at 170 miles an hour, and
Right.
it's not the GoPro. The GoPro works amazing. The ability to stay connected to data to put the stream
Right.
out is still challenged, not because the technology isn't there, but because of the fact that mostly because of the fact that tracks tend to be in areas that are remote, and if you're on one side of Road America and then the other,
Yeah.
you're in like
Yeah.
different climates. Like this, it's snowing on turn 5 and it's warm and sunny, it's so that's a big part of the challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you're onto something where, if amateur road racing had a little bit more attention, tons of people would share it because they'd be like, "Hey, look at me. Oh, hey, look at my brother. He's crazy. He's road racing." And then they would share it. And it would just be very viral. I think it would be successful. But the hardware and the software has just not been there to my, I would love to do it. I still would love to do it. That was the reason why I made Road Racing TV, was to kind of make an outlet for the guys that are coming up. But I feel like we just never had the right tech that was affordable.
I'm thinking like super low budget.
Yeah.
Week after it's done, I'm gonna post it. I'm gonna make it on my laptop. But here's my thought of filming a race for amateur stuff. You could like have 3 or 4 people in a track, a couple of corners that show a nice amount of space, a couple different corners, and then interview the guys afterwards and put it all together. And you have each section of the track. You wouldn't get super high slow-mos. Maybe you have a friend that has a camera, he can come for a weekend or so. But my iPhone's a 4K camera. The cameras I use to record this are good enough for capturing what's there. I'm not looking to spend a couple $100,000 in cameras right now. Just getting something out there would be cool.
Well, that was our whole thing, was that we were in the right place at the right time, where iPhone data speeds and camera quality, and then the advent of streaming services coming to every social platform, everything kind of clicked at the right time for us. It's, a lot of people probably had that idea for a lot of years and had been tried many, many times. But one of the things that made it work for us is that we were there and we just did it. That was all that it was. The hard part in everything in life is the doing. But I think
go ahead, Sean.
I just think that one of the challenges is going to be the fact that there's just not money anywhere. Listen, one of the highest volume motorcycle dealerships in Southern California is like 3 miles or 2 miles from my house. And a good friend of mine worked on the management team over there until recently. He moved to the Pacific Northwest. But I stayed really closely in touch with what was going on in that business, and to some extent in the industry with him. And you know what they're doing now? They're becoming e-bike dealerships.
Oh, wow.
Because electric mountain bikes have significantly more margin and significantly more demand. And so they take up less space. And so they can basically sell like, a bunch of $7,000, $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 electric mountain bikes in this little tiny space, like a 20th of their dealership, and drive profits off of that are significantly higher than trying to sell a bunch of R1s and ZXs and you name it. So many things have come together at once, where motorcycle R&D hasn't been invested into since like 2006. We're 15 years or more behind in R&D for the sport. Like, okay, yeah, you can argue that a lot has changed in MotoGP. A lot of improvements have come out of World Superbike. Cool. But like, look at what an R6 is in 2020 versus
Yeah.
2006.
Well, they
It's
just
the same
discontinued
machine.
it. They just discontinued the R6, right?
So
Did they?
There's no more in 2021. It'll be a track only bike. It's no more street bike.
So
Wow.
that's my point. So there's no money there. The industry is really in a tough place right now. And then, maybe I'm wrong, and I hope that I am now, but I'm just observing my kids, with my oldest kid being 16 now and having a 14-year-old, and just looking at their friends, and I just don't see people that are going to be motorcycle people. They're like, oh, stay home because of this pandemic. That changes nothing. I still interact with my friends digitally in the same way. They're not out like starting fires in the sewer culverts and stuff like what we were all probably doing as kids. And so I think there's just so many things coming together at once where I worry that we're watching the end of the sport.
And also with, they don't really have autonomous motorcycles yet. But with autonomous cars and people driving less, I worry that people are going to care less about performance driving. And it's just going to be, oh, my car takes me somewhere and I don't know how to drive anymore. I even found myself years ago using cruise control everywhere I go as a pit limiter for not speeding. So like, oh, 45, I'll just put it on pit limiter and now I'm like control. And I found that me doing that over and over made me not as good of a driver because you're taking away control, and now my foot is as sensitive or in the right spot. So I almost never use cruise control because it's like I don't want assists. I don't want this helping me, or it's taking away skill.
Well, Jay Leno just put out this great article, I want to say last week in the Wall Street Journal, where he basically, his thinking is that every car that we buy in the future to go places will be electric and increasing levels of autonomy over the next 20, 30 years, but that we will still buy cool gas powered whatever cars, and that will be similar to like people here, because it's LA, and a lot of my friends are long-term Angelinos and stuff. A lot of my buddies own Ferraris and McLarens and Lamborghinis and stuff, and what they do is they have this car that's like this insane, expensive, amazing, badass piece of equipment, and they drive it on Sunday.
Yeah.
And that's it. And that's kind of Jay Leno's theory, is that it might be a Miata in the future, but like your fun car that won't be autonomous and won't have all the different features will be like your Sunday cruise around car, but it won't make sense for the world that we're going into in the future. And if you think about it that way, then where do motorcycles fit into this? Again, referring to my kids, my 16-year-old daughter and most of her peers do not have their driver's licenses yet and aren't interested. My daughter hasn't even gotten her permit yet.
I
And
don't
I'm like, hey,
understand that.
I'm like, don't you want to like go places? I'll buy you a car. Like, I don't even care. This is coming from a guy who saved for months to buy my 1984 $500 Ford Ranger as my first car, because I was like, let me out of the house. I'll drive anything.
Yep. Yeah. Things have changed. Kids' interests have changed. I've noticed that too. A lot of younger kids around me don't have licenses, don't care to even get their license. I'm like, yeah, I was the same way. I was driving before I had my permit and I started getting my, you can get your driver's ed at 14, 9 months in Michigan. So I was the first one in the door, as I possibly could. Yeah. Yeah.
It's contrary though to the fact that right now, and again, accelerated by the pandemic, bicycle sales it's insane. The bicycle industry has just blown up like crazy. Now, what's that going to do? Mark and I
really
talked a lot.
good.
Mark and I talked a lot in the past about how like that Huffy that we all owned, that we like did some skids on and tried to get mom and dad to get some pegs on and stuff like that. That thing is what made us motorcycle riders and racers. It all started with that Walmart Huffy that we all had, whatever our own version of that was. It wasn't the Power Wheel or whatever. It was that thing. And we all, I think, in a way, are trying to relive that time when we were like 12, going out with the homies, and then wait till the streetlights come on and like all the bikes are in Jeff's front yard because that's where all the kids are getting a high C or whatever.
Right.
I think we're kind of trying to relive those moments in some way, or at least we know that that's fun and we can seek that fun with motorcycles. And so I think that if anything, I'm revitalized by the fact that every type of person, from kids to older people to, midlife crisis people like me and Mark or whatever, are all getting on bicycles.
Yeah,
And so that might
definitely
create a future generation of motorcycle riders.
That's where I got my start in motorcycles. I didn't really get onto a real motorcycle until I was probably 13 years old, and that was a CVT scooter. It was a 250. So I got the itch from always going out. I think I had a Mongoose when I was younger, a Mongoose, and I think it was a Meyer bike. It's very similar. Just riding around the neighborhoods, I used to try to get myself lost and find my way back a different way. So neighborhoods around me weren't so cookie cutter crisscross. It was all looping around and easy to get lost. So that was my childhood, just going out and getting lost on my bicycle and trying to find my way home, and no cell phones.
Yeah, I think the digital age will come around. I think people will want to get lost very soon.
Yeah,
I like that.
Well, now
Always quotable.
I like to go get lost, but track it on my GPS watch.
Strava, or it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So this is what I'll tell you. I got to give you an insight into what the mountain bike racing scene is like. So when I came over here in the beginning of 2018, just nearly 3 years ago now, leaving Illinois and coming to live down here in what is an absolute unabashed paradise. A lot of people have a lot of things there, like quote some Joe Rogan stuff about why California sucks or whatever. That's fine. But if you grew up on like a little farm town in northern Illinois and the suburbs of the far suburbs of the suburbs of Chicago, listen, I grew up in Sycamore, Illinois. Best little town, like still has 1 cent parking meters downtown, like amazing place to be a kid. But just I found myself like, as I, transition into adulthood, especially when I'm living at that time, as everyone knows from me saying it 1,000 times in the videos, from living in Logan Square neighborhood in Chicago, running my business there. Where do you go outdoors and have an adventure when you're there? The best way to do it, period, is on a motorcycle, because then you have the wind in your hair, you have the excitement. So on. Here, I live, miles away from the beach. I live on a mountain. I have 1,800 miles of trail that open up from the trailhead 300 yards from my house.
Yeah.
And I can ride my bike to the beach. I can ride up, a 5,000-foot mountain. I can, you name it, it's all here. And if I want some diversity, I can drive. And I can drive into the snow. Today I could be in the snow. I could be at the beach, whatever. Point is, I came here into a mountain bike mecca, and I immediately worked a deal with this amazing company called Eminent Cycles out of San Diego. And I started racing on my Eminent Cycles bike. And, and I was like, well, I've always been a good athlete. I'm just going to do what I did in motorcycle and in the other sports before that and show up and kick butt and take names. Unfortunately, that didn't happen at all. People, a big difference is that, like when I was racing motorcycles, I'm hanging with Mark. We're on the motorcycle every single weekend. I have about 15 times more experience and more exposure to the bike than most people do, where I'm on the track every weekend, especially thanks to Motovid. I can't not say how amazing Motovid is, like the best organization ever, who was so kind and generous with me and Mark and with our friends and my family. It's just safest possible place to do a track day
organization.
Yeah, incredible track day organization. But then when you come to mountain bike, now I look on my Strava end of year wrap up, and I rode 5 days a week on average. And I'm like shredding on a race course that's in my backyard 5 days a week. And it turns out that everybody else here that's like fast has been doing that since they were like 7 years old.
Yeah.
And so I'm way behind. And so my first season, I got somewhere in the top 5 worst every single race. But you show up for an event and there's like 350, 500, or 1,000 entrants at a race event, especially in an enduro racing event, which is where you pedal yourself up, not for time, and then you go down for time like 3 times over. 1,000 people, think about that, 1,000 racers. And then each of those racers brings like 1, 2, 3, 4 friends and family with them. You've got a 5,000 person event at like a club level race, right? Why is that? Because you can kind of run what you brung. You got that junkie bike, you can race that. You've got like a super high end 10,000 plus bike, you can race that. Anything in between. There will be pros there that day racing the same course as you, and there will be like an 8-year-old girl racing that course. She'll be faster than you, but she'll be there too.
Yeah,
And
and then there'll also be a 75-year-old guy on worse machinery that's going to pass you.
Yes.
Heckle you as he goes by.
And so this is where it gets interesting. There's virtually no coverage of mountain bike racing except for the highest level of racing, right? And I've noticed that the majority of the sponsorship, 99% of the sponsorship I see for the fastest mountain bike and downhillers like in the world are industry sponsors. And so think about that. In motorcycle, you have to get outside sponsorship because there's no money in the industry. I've noticed that in mountain bike, where the cost of operation is virtually nothing, but the cost of purchase is where all the money is. So like, for instance, my enduro race bike is maybe a $10,000 bike, and you pay that once and it costs you nothing every time you ride it. And then you sell it 3 years later for like $7,000. It's a different type of way that the money works. And so in mountain bike, the tire company is a sponsor for a racer. This frame maker is a sponsor. This energy bar company that's specific to biking is a sponsor, and so on. Because there seems to be money, there seems to be revenue, and there seems to be a lot of it, where, you know, it makes sense because the barriers to entry are very low. It's still dangerous as hell, by the way, but it's a different, I'd say, like, if club racing and motorcycle racing is like here, mountain bike is like down here or down
It's
here.
still dangerous. Like I'm clipping trees all the time with my hands and my knuckles, and sometimes your head, hopefully not, you know, just grazing as you go by. But the injuries aren't as catastrophic, but you can still break bones.
Well, the difference is that you can choose. So like when you get on the track for a race, not for a track day, you can ride, even in beginner on a track day, though, we all know that's like the worst. You're safest in the advanced group.
Oh yeah,
But
for sure.
Point is, on the mountain bike, you can choose the level of danger that you embrace, depending on the way that you attack the course and how fast you choose to go and what difficulty of course you choose to ride, where you can be alone and not have somebody else crash into you.
Yeah.
In motorcycle, there's always a risk that somebody else will crash into you because you're all on the track at once. But anyway, I wonder about how, I haven't figured this out yet, but I find myself lately very curious about how the correlation of these two is going to line up, because dirt bike sales are like insane this year. Mountain bike sales are insane this year. And yet there's no more R6. You know, how does this all work out? How do we predict the future? I think that coalition based here out of LA, I can't remember the name of it now, but I gave them a couple of comments maybe 2 years ago about some stuff. But whatever it is, they were making predictions 2 years ago about the future of the industry and where we were heading. And I think that the pandemic has flipped all of that upside down. And your guess is as good as mine. Anyone's guess is not going to be very accurate.
I think there will be some trickle up and down with the bikes going up, and the e-bikes are exploding. I just talked to my dad the other day, and my dad just got done riding 2,000 miles. I think it was 2,700 miles, I want to say, all of 2020, which is, he outpaced me and my brother.
Yep.
It's incredible. And I said, Dad, you going to get a snow bike for the snow? He's like, I don't know, maybe an e-bike. Maybe the wife and him are going to buy e-bikes for next year.
Yep.
I'd like to ride. It's great exercise, being outside. And you can go farther and faster. But so he doesn't like motorcycles. He had a scooter, but he doesn't like to ride. He never really got fully trained well enough, I don't think. The scooter that he had was very wobbly. It was very unstable feeling. So he never felt comfortable doing that. He always liked going the slower speeds on the bicycles instead.
Well, I mean, I would say again, the thing that has been nice about it for me is the fact that right now, because I raced this year, I raced enduro, which is the one category I haven't won a series in yet, but I've progressed a lot in the last. I finished my third season just now, so I just won a downhill series and I just won an e-bike series. I
Okay.
race enduro bike, which is like a long travel mountain bike, but you got to pedal your own butt up the mountain and then you race down.
Yeah.
Downhill, you take the lift up and then race down as fast as you can. That's one most people know about. And then e-bike racing, it's not even really an established sport per se yet.
brand
We're in
new.
our first season. It's brand new. So I participated and won the series for the first full e-bike series in SoCal. My son raced as well. He got some wins, but he DNF'd his last one, so he didn't get his series championship. But the point is, we have gone and tasted the goods and such, and it's just nice that my buddy texted me just minutes ago, like, what's up? Are we going to go and shred today? And I can just walk to the garage, throw a leg over, pedal up, and then ride at the top level where especially as, you start racing your sport bike more, then it's like super boring to go on the road. And if you do, you just want to, like you said, kind of turn the cruise control on so you don't go to jail, because you're not
Right.
going to get your jollies going fast in a straight line once you start shredding corners at 45 miles an hour and
Right.
80 miles an hour in some cases and so on,
So,
like what you can do on the track.
So I just find it so interesting. You mentioned it a little bit, how in most other sports like road racing, you might train once or twice a week, maybe if you're lucky and if you got the funds to. But in other sports, you're swimming or you're hockey, football, or you're practicing 6 days a week, maybe actually your sport. And in our sport, we play, we practice with bicycles or mini motos or cars. In the meantime, it's just so different than most sports where we don't actually do the sport we're doing when we practice.
And
Yeah,
actually, that was shocking. When I saw Moto America guys, they would ride their bike like 11 times a year. I'm like, what? My mind is blown. Sorry, Mark. Wait, what were you saying?
No, I was just going to say that, mini bike racing is great training for road racing. I mean, my favorite motorcycle right now is my KLX 110 dirt bike, and I do have a track in my yard right now. I'm super blessed to have that, but
And
that's critical.
How do you decide on a CC for a mini bike? Is the 110 seem like a good all-around bike for you?
I mean, I like the 110 because the geometry of the bike. I have a slew of dirt bikes in my garage, but that one just feels the best. But what got me started on that is going to Corner Spin in South Carolina, which is like a dirt bike class for road racers, which is, I highly suggest doing it either with him, or if you don't have the funds to go to South Carolina, get yourself a 110, put some flat track tires on it, and just start crashing. Which, it sounds weird, but like, I learned, to be honest with you, I'd probably be better on the track now than I ever was, because I'm way more comfortable on my 110, because you learn to push the front where it's low consequence, just like Sean was talking about in the street. Consequences on your R6 on the street are insane. So you're not even going to go there. And even when you're on the track, even a casual track day, let's say you run to the track by yourself, the consequences are still very high. So what I do is I gear up, go on the 110 and start ripping the track and start just pushing the bike. I can ride that 110 way better than I could ride any other bike. I mean, I'd be curious to get, I haven't been on a sport bike in 2 years, but I bet you I'd be a lot better than I was, just because that 110, getting the feel, getting the bike to back up, back in, getting the front to tuck, but you save it. I mean, that stuff is critical skills that, transfer very easily and also give you a ton of confidence on the sport bike. Anytime I came from a dirt track style thing and then went back on the sport bike, felt like $1,000,000.
And how do you think something like corner spin would compare to like a Texas tornado boot camp?
It's the same. It's just not as expensive and exclusive.
Okay. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
never done
and
either. So
Aaron in corner spin is like, the thing is, when you go to Texas Tornado, which is awesome and would be really fun too, you have a variety of people that could be instructing you. When you show up at corner spin, you're getting Aaron, and he will be overseeing everything that happens, and his ability to get to know you and figure out what you have going on. It was when Mark took me there, and I didn't even know what we were getting into. He's like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna go ride some dirt bikes." I'm like, "Okay, whatever." It changed my whole ability to ride. One day
yeah.
with Aaron changed everything in me. And then naturally, like one day later, we bought a Honda 100 for me off the side of the road somewhere.
You liked it so much you bought one on the side of the road.
Yeah, because Aaron does his course on Honda 100s.
Okay.
And so I bought one right then on the spot, which since recently Mark bought from me. By the way, speaking of which, just for funsies, Eric, there's a video. Mark and I met up in Rifle Gap, Colorado earlier this year, and we filmed a race in which Mark was on his KLX and I was on a downhill e-bike, and we raced like gnarly, terrible. Like we could have killed ourselves so many times over, but we just got back in that classic zone of being racers. And so that video is on YouTube. I can send you a link after.
Yeah, I'd love to check it out, man, for sure. I noticed, I wanted to say this, you have a LA County Fire Foundation in the corner of your little Zoom. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure, gladly. So I have, I don't really talk openly about this. I just more share like Sean Kingsbury, State Farm agent from Chicago. That's like my tagline. I did that to really humanize me, as the fact that like I'm just a random guy. I'm not like some motorcycle industry person when I was doing road racing TV. So everybody kind of remembers me for that, I find. And so, but I'm your sort of like classic MBA, management consulting career, so on type of guy. And because of the fact that I have been at this point 18 years as a professional manager and leader of people, one of the things that's been critical to me is giving back to the community and trying to influence my own little niche of the world or little slice of the world wherever I am. So I started serving on nonprofit boards quite a few years ago, and I found that by just coming in as a professional manager that can hold people accountable and set expectations and oversee projects and do some business writing and stuff, I've been able to have some positive impact. And so I previously served on the board of the Chicago Community Policing something or another called CAPS, which was interesting, but I frankly, full disclosure, it's very tricky for like executives in Fortune 50 firms to associate with the police. I love the police, but it's just more controversial. At the same time, I also served on the board on a fire board in Chicago called the Survive Alive House, which is a Chicago organization that puts about 200,000 kids a year through a simulated house that simulates a fire to teach them how to not die in the fire.
Okay.
Critical. Every fifth grader in Chicago gets this, and they needed funding, they needed a new RV, they blah, blah, blah. And so I served on that board to help them modernize the organization. And it's just an amazing, amazing place. So long story short, when I moved here, I was introduced to the board of the LA County Fire, which is an organization that has 175 plus fire stations. The organization runs all the fire trucks, all the lifeguards, and all the ambulances that service the 30 million people that live here in LA. And so I have now been serving on this board for over 2 years. I don't think quite 3. I don't remember exactly when I joined. And same thing, I came in at a good time when the foundation was just being professionalized. This amazing woman named Stacy Mungo, who's a Long Beach councilwoman slash sheriff's deputy slash fire department employee slash USC professor, like super impressive person. She joined the board around the same time that I did. And now I serve on the executive committee of the board, and I'm the head of fundraising. And so what that means is I help collect and then administer the $4-5 million a year, 3-4, whatever it happens to be in the year, money that does stuff like decoupling life-saving equipment, meaning
Okay.
all of our Jaws of Life Genesis systems are now powered by Milwaukee batteries, the same that you have on a tool in your garage. Buying new ropes and ladders that are used for pulling people out of canyons. Buying new mattresses is a project I'm working on right now to try to get a major company to provide, 700 or 800 new mattresses for the firefighters to sleep on. Women's Fire Prep Academy that help more women be able to make it through Fire Academy. Just the list goes on and on. So long story short, I donate my Zoom account every single month as one of the many ways that my wife and I give money. We also raise money for the organization, and our Zoom account is like one little pittance of that because they can't pay for it themselves. So yeah, I'm really proud of that work. And just for anyone who ever hears this, nonprofit boards need you.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter.
Thing I've never really considered or thought about even that kind of thing.
It's crazy to think that like I'm just a knucklehead, but I've been serving on boards long enough that now, I've been telling LA County that I plan to quit and do other things with my time for like a year. And they just are like, no, you're not, you need to build your successor up over the next couple of years before you can go. But you can, just by showing up and doing, I usually try to give 4 to 5 hours of my time a month. And by just doing that, you can have a major impact. Sometimes I laugh to myself as I'm like approving something to spend $900,000 to buy some life-saving equipment or whatever. I'm like, how am I the person that I don't even know anything about firefighting whatsoever, but I just have a really smart group of people that advise me on those decisions.
Sounds like you're in a good place to help some people. I was just thinking the other day, man, I hope to be rich one day. That's the goal. I think that's a lot of people's goals, but just not only for myself, but to be able to give back to others. Once everything for myself is and my family is situated, then it's time to help other people. And one of the things I was thinking of is, man, wouldn't it be cool to provide bicycles or transportation and cars to people? And I mean, you could buy like even a really nice expensive bike, $500 or less. Buy a few bikes would help out people tremendously getting to work or getting to school. There's a lot of different ways you can help people. There's just so many avenues, whether it's food, people need food. Like what's the most, what are people's needs the highest and what do they need, the most?
So I'll say this, I love that. And I'll say, you are rich right now. You just don't necessarily realize it.
Doesn't feel like it sometimes.
The thing is this, if you wait until you have X amount of cash and you try to put a number on like, I must do this before I can give back, you're wrong.
Yeah.
What'll happen is quite the opposite. Start now, because I don't know if you've ever been really badly injured or really sick, Eric. I know from Mark and I being best friends and talking to each other all the time, spending so much time together, both of us have been in that place where we've been badly injured and or badly ill. And that is when you are not rich. You don't care about all the other things in life that you have going in those moments. And as long as that's not currently you, then you have nothing limiting you from giving back. If you want to do this, you have time on your hands. And what I find is like, I've watched Mark grow his company and Mark has watched me grow in my career. And as your net worth and income and so on and so whatever increases, that usually correlates with the amount of demand placed on your life from the work that you're doing. And so if you have a little bit of free time and a little bit of positive energy now, then there's nothing to stop you from linking up with an experienced not-for-profit person like myself. There's somebody like me in your town that you probably already know. They just don't talk about it. And you could find companies that have money that want to fund these bicycles to give to people in order to help communities in a way that makes sense for you. You could use motorcycles as the classroom to teach kids about a thing. You can, the sky is the limit for what you can do. It's just that it takes a lot of years to get really good at that type of work. And so the best thing to do is just jump in now.
Start now. Yeah, I like that. It's cool the amount of things you can do if you really try. I'm a big goal-oriented person, and I like to write down my goals and write them on the wall so I see them every day. And it's cool to eventually look back at them some of the years that I keep in the attic, and it's like, wow, that came true. That came,
Yep.
well, that one didn't really happen. I didn't really care about that one, but the next one, that one came true, you know? And so if you don't
Yep.
ever write it down, you're never going to get there.
Yep. Well, obviously you are the type of person that can execute on your vision because of the fact that you've been consistently doing this and all the other stuff that you do. So, you know, if you think about what you'll find, and this is going to be again, like, you know, I can be a little offensive at times. I know that about myself. What you'll usually find when you show up at a not-for-profit board is that it's super disorganized with no leadership, and it's a bunch of people that are like trying to get a resume bullet, or they're just like bored at home and have nothing else to do, and they have
Yeah.
no skills to move that forward and execute on anything at all. And by just showing up and consistently being there, building trust with the people that you have good intentions, then you can drive really, really huge results
Yeah.
by
I
just
mean,
doing it.
yeah, I look at guys like Elon Musk is trying to build a rocket company and go to Mars and, you know, reinvent banking and solar
Hmm.
panels. It's like, wow, what have I done with my life?
But don't look at him. That's wrong. What
Yeah.
you're not seeing, you got to be careful, Eric. We all have a tendency to benchmark across the wrong stuff. You know, for me, if you say like, Sean, what's going really great in your life? I'm going to say the fact that Josephine and I are happily married. The kids are all healthy. You know, that's what really matters.
Yeah.
If you look at other people's life, when you can only see one element of it, for instance, their career or their wealth or their fame or one of those things, you might be missing the fact that they're struggling deeply in some other areas.
Yeah.
You know, well-rounded people are the ones that really have the good life that you should model. We have to be very, very careful who we benchmark ourselves against, because there's always going to be somebody who did it faster or bigger or better than you in whatever type of way.
Yeah, I definitely get sucked into that. I get it into the Grant Cardone 10x. You got to do 10 times what you're doing now. I'm like, I can't. There's not enough time to do 10 times what I'm doing now. You get burnt
Yep.
out. You get flustered. You know, you take on too much. I notice I take on too much sometimes, and sometimes I gotta just say, okay, I've worked 3 jobs today. It's time to relax. I don't have to do anything else today.
Hmm.
You know,
That's
so
right.
I
Well, this kind of comes full circle, doesn't it? Because when it comes to motorcycle racing, or me dabbling in kind of dipping my toe into the mountain bike racing scene, or having this conversation today, or working for charities, or whatever the case is, what really matters in the end is the people that we do this stuff with. And if this year has not reminded everybody of that, because all of us have watched a lot of people that we thought we were pretty tight with, we kind of watch them fade out of our lives. And we've seen other people where we've really bolstered the relationship. And we've all known people that needed help, and people have helped us, and we've been able to help many other people, and so on. In the end, what we do, you know, the community that you build, whether you're just out there on your farm and no internet connection in the middle of nowhere, or if you're Elon Musk or anything in between, what really matters is just the impact that you have and that you allow others to have on each other as people. That's really it. That's all that it comes down to. And if Elon likes the people that he works with and enjoys that, then he's going to be happy. But just like everybody else, if he doesn't like the people that he's doing whatever he's doing, whether it's going to Mars or, you know, running a solar company or making cars, it's going to make it suck for him too, just like it would for the rest of us. And
yeah.
so that's what it all comes down to.
Yeah, those relationships are so important. Um, let's try to wrap this up a little bit. We already did almost an hour and 40 minutes. Would you believe almost 100 minutes so far? I got a few more bullet points I'd like to hit with both of you. And do either of you have any past or present sponsor shout outs you'd like to give, or any thanks to any specific people?
After you, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, I think I already covered some of mine, but yeah, I definitely, uh, the 3 years that I was road racing, Feral Performance, you know, gave 1,000% to my program. So I owe a lot to him. K-Tech Shocks did a lot for me in my professional racing. John Blake, my, you know, #1 pit crew guy, he spent a lot of time on the road with me. But yeah, that covers my big ones. I had to thank Sean. Obviously, him and I built the road racing TV together, and he spent way more time with me than I thought, you know, possible by any grown man. Very thankful for our friendship and our, we always say like, what, I'm looking forward to working with Sean again on something. We just got to pick something. But anything, Sean and I are very hardworking people, and I feel like we have complementary skill sets. So, whatever the next project may be, I'm looking forward to it.
Very good.
Yeah, same here. I think that I've mentioned some of the organizations that have helped me with their incredible generosity and kindness. But really, it came down to the fact that when Mark and I connected, we both just said, okay, let's do this. And the hero behind the scenes that really, I think for both of us, not directly for Mark, but that made it possible for us to do this was my wife. Think about this, 7 employees in our business, millions of dollars of revenues that we're overseeing with thousands of customers and 4 kids, one of which at the time was like 1.5 or something like that. I gave her this proposal of, hey, I want to go out with Mark and be gone pretty much from like fly out somewhere on Wednesday and not be back until the next Monday or Tuesday for the entirety of the year. What do you think about that? And she was like, yeah, it's fine. I'll run the business and I'll take care of the entire family household, make sure the kids get to school, make sure that all the employees show up for work, make sure that payrolls are paid and so on and so forth. She stepped in and did absolutely all of it. And so there's no way that any of that would have happened without me having the incredible, just beast performer of a partner that I have in Josephine. And by the way, she also raced that year.
Oh yeah.
She, insanely fast woman and just incredible athlete and just impressive on so many levels. I could go on and about her. And the biggest company that's had the biggest influence on my life, hands down, is State Farm. I left Johnson & Johnson and came to State Farm kind of on a whim, just sort of like, I don't know, I'm not sure that insurance is for me or whatever the case is. And I have, in the 6 years now that I've been with the organization, I've never been asked to go into the gray area ever. I've always been empowered to do the right thing. I get to help people every single day. Right now, I have a team of 40 people that I coach, and they have another 100-something people that are working for them. And I have this incredible team of people that help support me in doing what I do. I have a boss. I've had very few bosses in my life. It's just not for me normally, but I have a boss who's like a superhero with what he does and his ethics and his ability to drive incredible results in a sales organization without ever crossing the line or even getting chalk on his toes. That has had an incredible influence on my life in so many ways, and allows me to realize a lot of my dreams that I, again, just never would have imagined could become a reality in the way that they have. So that's really my shout out, and that might sound kind of like cheesy or whatever, but listen, I worked for some of the best companies in the world before I came to State Farm, and I was always asked to do stuff or work with people in such ways that was just no bueno. And I've never had that since.
I understand that. I'm myself, and I think a lot of people aren't necessarily great employees. I'm running my own business because I don't want to be an employee. I don't want to be told what to do, and it's not necessarily a subordinate thing. It's just like the way you told me to do it is stupid. Why would I do it that way?
Yeah.
It's that whole thing, and I don't mesh well with that sometimes.
What's your next one, Eric? Bring it on.
My next point is I just created some combo videos, so everybody go over to YouTube and check those out. I mishmashed my 1 through 10 videos into one, just a minute of each, and I did that with 1 through 10, 11 through 21, and so on. So yeah, those are kind of new for me. I've been putting those together. Do you guys have any parting words for the world, whether it's about racing or State Farm or like how to treat others, anything like that? Anything you want to leave the world with today?
Mark, you mind if I go first on this one?
No, go. You take it. Close
Unabashed
it out.
shout out. I'm still just as public with my lifestyle as ever. My Instagram is King's Baby, the same one that it's been for forever. And I have a YouTube channel now that I'm growing, and my YouTube is just pitiful. I think I have like 101 followers or whatever, but I have a blast creating it, and it's just my name, Swahn Kingsbury. It's all mountain biking stuff, and me, being kind of a distinguished gentleman type of age in my life, where I'm shredding with my 14-year-old son. So that's kind of fun. But here's my closeout. Friends really matter. Friends really matter. And I think that, we have our family. We all always already know that family is important and family is first in everything. But you get to choose your friends. And what I've learned through the years that Mark and I have been friends is that with the right people, like I have with Mark and some of our other friends, we have an amazing group of friends. You can find people in your life that will accelerate everything that you do and be a positive influence on you and be there for you when you have hard times, or maybe you need to borrow some money, or you need some emotional support, or whatever the case is, but then also be there for you in the good times. And so especially I've really found myself thinking about that a lot this year. I talk with other people, and a lot of people have good friends, and that's really good, but you have to remember the fact that friendships need investment of time and investment of energy, and there's just not much more that's much more worthwhile than that. And for me, the friends that I made from my motorcycle time are some of the best friends that I have still. Just some of the best people, and what you kind of go through together, of helping each other when your bike is wrecked or when you're hurt or whatever the case is. I think that's in the end what this is really all about.
And that comes to mind the quote from, I think it's Into the Wild, where he's at the end and he says, "Happiness is only real if it's shared." So yeah, friends make the world go around. And Mark, do you have anything to say?
No, Sean, I can't follow that up. Sean nailed it.
Well, very
Thanks
good.
so much for having us.
Yeah, Mark, where are you online, and where can they find you out there in the interwebs?
Yeah, my Instagram is Rhoades Racing. It's going to be a little dirt track racing now, so kind of got back on Instagram with the dirt track racing, but yeah, Rhoades Racing at Instagram.
All right. Well, I'm gonna get working on this podcast, get this edited, and get it out in the next week or so, probably earlier. And I appreciate you guys for coming on here and humoring me and talking to me for about an hour and 47 minutes so far. So have a great new year, great next couple of weeks, and I'll talk to you guys real soon.
You too. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Eric.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.